Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and today we are taking a look at Moza's MTP Throttle quadrant. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and we're also going to be correcting some misinformation that is out there on YouTube right now that I want to make sure is addressed before you guys go out and purchase this thing. It is an absolutely fantastic piece of hardware, but I do want to make sure once again that you are very clear on what it can and cannot do. If you are interested in any of my tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, or simply interested in supporting the channel, consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides as well as any future guides that come down the road. Patreon link can be found in the description below. All right, pilots. So first, let's go ahead and talk about some of the misinformation that is out there on YouTube right now. I want to be very clear that all the information I'm about to give you is current and comes directly from Moza themselves. So, again, I'm not going to be calling out any names or anything like that. I just want to make sure that people have a very clear understanding of what they are purchasing at the time of this video and at the time of any of the videos that are currently out there, as well as what is physically able this product is physically able to do and what it can't. So the first thing that I want to correct right away is that this is not a force feedback throttle. It is a haptic feedback throttle. Real quickly, let's go through a real quick understanding of what the difference between the two is. Haptic feedback. I want you guys to picture yourselves in your car holding onto your steering wheel, but the engine is off. What does it feel? Nothing other than you were holding on to your steering wheel. Nothing's happening. Now take that same grip and now I want you to start the engine. When you start the engine at a low idle, you can feel a little vibration in the steering wheel. You can hear the clunking of the engine, maybe especially if you're used to something like a big truck or maybe a V8 where it goes boom, 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 boom. You can feel that. And then as you accelerate onto the engine, increasing the RPMs, that haptic feedback, that vibration changes. It increases. It becomes much faster. Still does not change anything about the way you drive the wheel, hold the wheel. It's not impacting the way the vehicle steers or otherwise. It is simply a feeling that you can tell that the engine performance has changed. Another example would be, for example, if you are driving down on a main road, a normal road inside the city using an asphalt turf, you can feel a different kind of vibration. The car still handles perfectly fine and smooth, but if you take your car usually up on the freeway, as you guys know, most freeways are a much smoother concrete surface. You can feel the difference when you transition from asphalt onto the freeway. You can feel the ground sort of smooth out. Again, nothing has changed about your vehicle. It still handles just as smoothly as it did before. It's not requiring you to turn any differently. Now let's talk about force feedback, for example, using the same example. You're driving down the road, you're at a little bit of a higher speed, let's say 40 to 50 miles an hour, and you go to make a tighter left or right hand turn. What does the steering wheel want to do? It wants to center itself, so it is forcing you to make that correction and hold the wheel in the same spot. If you're in the middle of a turn and the wheels are turned and you let go, what do the wheels do? They straighten out. Okay, how do most of us, you come out of a U-turn, what do most of us do? Do you sit there and manually bring it back to center? Most of us, no. We loosen our grip on the steering wheel, push on the pedal a little bit, and let the wheels sort of come back around to almost center themselves. Last example on force feedback, you're driving down the road, same thing, straight and perfect road, but you hit a pothole. What happens to the steering wheel? Boom, 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 boom. That is an example of force feedback. These are high-level examples, but I wanted you to understand the difference in case that may be a little cloudy for anybody. There's a big difference between force feedback and haptic feedback. An example of a force feedback throttle, for instance, would be if you have ever flown the PMDG Boeing series of aircraft or any of the Boeing aircraft in a flight simulator. You turn on the auto throttle and you turn your camera down and you're watching the throttle. As the engine changes speed, what is the throttles doing? The throttles are automatically moving back and forth by themselves. This doesn't happen in Airbus because an Airbus is 100% fly-by-wire aircraft. Any input you give to the throttle is then sent to a computer, and then the computer tells the engines what to do. On a Boeing, most Boeings still, when you adjust the throttle position, it is an actual linkage between the pilot's hand and the engine outside. So that's why when it changes performance, you can actually see them move. Okay. So now that we have that cleared up on what the two do, The last thing that I unfortunately do want to touch on and make very clear to you, because I saw a video where someone was expressing that the haptic feedback felt amazing and they were absolutely enjoying the haptic feedback and the vibrations. I'm not sure where that vibration was coming from, but it was not coming from the throttle. As again, Mark over the Sim Hanger did a wonderful review, I want to clarify the same thing he pointed out, which is that at the time of this recording, the haptic feedback only functions in one condition, and that is right now in the event of a stall. The stall telemetry can be interpreted by the MTP throttle that you guys are seeing here on the camera, and will create sort of a rumble feedback that you would feel in the event of a stall. However, in any other condition at the time of this right now, the actual haptic feedback itself is not functioning. This is on the latest firmware and the latest software from the Moza Cockpit software. So please keep that in mind. And that is the reason why I said watch before you buy, is I wanted to make sure that you knew what you were purchasing at the time. Now, the haptic feedback is absolutely coming. Again, it is currently pending a software update. The software is being worked, but at the time of this recording, the haptic feedback is not functional. Okay, yes, like I said, in the event of a stall, but let's just call a spade and say that for the all intensive purposes, unless you plan on just going up and installing your aircraft over and over again, the haptic feedback does not work. Okay, so, but it will. I want to stress that it is coming. And once that is released, we will be doing another review here on the channel, showcasing that as best as you can. Haptic feedback is a little bit different than force feedback in the aspect it's a little bit harder, even more so than force feedback is, to showcase. But we will definitely be doing a video on that once it has released. So that clears up any misinformation, and I'm not saying anything was intentional. I want to make that very clear. It's just a matter of I want to make sure that you as the viewer and as the consumer understand what you are purchasing at this date if you were to buy the MTP. So without further delay, now let's get in to the good stuff. All right, so at this point, we're going to do a couple different camera views, but I want to make sure you guys sort of get the primary side of this thing. So first, as you guys can see, it has a very, very slick design. The shaking you guys are seeing is me getting my big ass over the cockpit. So the action first, let's talk about the throttles. Let's talk about the good part. And by the way, the wiggling is because I don't have it actually bolted down at the moment. So the action is extremely smooth all the way through. You can see that we have detents with a genuine finger lift. And these detents are all configurable and removable if you choose, as well as so is the tension in each independent axis. They can be adjusted very, very easily, and they are right up here on top, one for the left, one for the right, making that extremely easy to adjust. It's a simple Allen key. You turn them to your desire, and you can do them either independently or as a pair. So that is a major pro for me. When it comes to all of the buttons and switches, you can see the LED lighting is absolutely done beautifully, especially with the gloss finish. I actually really like the gloss finish. The only thing that I dislike about any kind of gloss finish with this stuff is obviously fingerprints. Fingerprints are going to get on. That's the nature of the beast, so be ready for that. But the overall design and ergonomics and easy reach of any of the controls makes it very, very nice. You do have a lighting control switch here that can be adjusted inside the simulator. The idea behind this isn't to adjust the throttle, it's for you to adjust your lighting in the cockpit. This is very much so modeled with the F-18 Hornet in mind. You have your left gen, your battery, your right gen, your FLIR, your laser target designator, and a whole bunch of other things that are all Hornet related. So yes, definitely very, very much so modeled after the Hornet. You have your APU, left and right engine crank with a 3-position switch, your position lights that are notched and modeled. Now, the thing about that I'll give you guys a heads up is obviously it comes with a very nice cellophane protector on it that you're going to want to remove just like any other electronics. Keeps the screen nice and pretty. You can simply pop these off. They do not pop off easily, but easily enough that you don't have to put any real force. They are notched according to the shape of the post. You can just place them back on and they fit very snug. You also have some of your lights, your strobe lights, your integrated lights, integral lights. You have rudder trim here. You also have your push to trim for the F-18 Hornet, for those of you who are big Hornet fans like myself. And you have your FCLS reset button. Here you just have a standard slider that you can use. I usually use this for my zoom control inside of the aircraft when I'm flying into D. Now, let's talk about the rest of the configuration here on the throttle. You have your lights master switch. This is a 3-position switch, just like we saw on the Thrustmaster Warthog and many of the others, so very similar in that aspect, again, modeling the real aircraft. You have a full rear detent, 2 more push buttons here, and yes, of course, these, by the way, just to be clear, these 2 throttles do interlock with each other. Now, let's go ahead and get to the right side of this so you guys can see what it's like on the other side. On this side, you guys are going to have to forgive the shoddy camera work. Let's go ahead and get a light on there. Boom, there you go. Wow, love living in the desert. That's all dust right there. Anyways, so you have a couple of really awesome configurations here that I really enjoy. First off, you have a vertical hat switch. And what I mean by vertical is just the overall positioning, but it is a 4-way with a push. Here you have your, what is usually used as your speed brake switch, a static forward switch, center. Oh, no, sorry. That's a hat switch. That's the other one down there. They look the same. Don't yell at me. This is another 4-position hat switch, or your mic switch, again, with a push button. This is your speed brake switch. So static in the forward position, or toggle, center, and then momentary aft for when you want to just tap your speed brakes out for just a moment, and then you let them go and they'll go back to center. And then you have another push button here. You have a full axis yoke with push. This is usually used as your target designator for those of you who are unfamiliar with the purpose of that, but obviously you can map it to anything that is of your liking. And that is it for your buttons and switches. Let's go ahead and show how the throttles link. And again, very nice, smooth action all the way through. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts after using this in both Microsoft Flight Simulator as well as in DCS World. All right, pilots, so now let's talk about my final thoughts on this throttle. I will say it is probably one of the best bangs for the buck right now. We know that the haptic feedback is coming and is going to be an official release and a software update, and that's obviously going to change the game even further, but even in its current design, one of my favorite parts about it is that all the switches are toggle switches. I'm a big toggle switch proponent, and that's just because I like the feeling of it. There are plenty of people who find tons of use, and momentary switches in flight simulation absolutely have a purpose. And I want to talk about that for just a minute because I think that's something that people don't consider very often, as it was pointed out to me a long time ago when I was reviewing the Virpil CM3. The idea behind momentary versus toggle is something to be considered. For example, if you have a software that does like what, for example, DCS World does, or what SPAD.next will definitely do when it comes to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that is to sync the controls. Meaning that if you do not remember to set your throttle switches exactly as they need to be in the cockpit, for example, a hot start. Let's say you are starting in DCS World or in Microsoft Flight Simulator and you're already in the air. You do not want your battery toggle switch to be in the off position. Okay, or your generators or alternators, whatever it may be. You don't want to start up your plane, have the throttle control sync, and then all of a sudden you lose power, or at least your electronics. Now, not the end of the world if that were to happen when it comes to Microsoft Flight Simulator. Usually you flip the battery back on, you're good. But it is something to be considerate of. Where DCS World, that actually can be a much more significant issue because of the way that the nature of combat aircraft and how they work. You could find yourself in a really detrimental situation if you were starting out in a combat zone and all of a sudden you were to launch and all of your avionics were turned off. That could be a bad day, right? So those are things to certainly think about. But I really, really like toggle switches. I think toggle switches are my favorite. As far as the overall performance of the throttle itself in both simulators, it was extremely smooth actioned, extremely, even on one of the higher tensions. I tested it with both the most incredible tension and just about the least. I will say on the least amount of tension, that obviously wasn't any fun at all because they literally were floppy noodles. A little touch and thunk, down they'll go, which... okay, you take the tension out, that's what's going to happen. But even on one of its strongest and tightest of tensions, you were still able, now it required a lot of force at that point, but I was still able to control the throttle input down to the 100 of RPM. So that was very, very nice. And again, it does not matter. In most situations, especially in my most recent videos where you guys have seen me either on live stream or anytime that you've seen me in the cockpit, this is the throttle that I was using. That's why that it was left off of camera, is because I obviously was under NDA and could not show you that yet. But I have been using this throttle on every video for just about the last month and a half. So I wanted to make sure that I had a really good solid foundation to present to you guys before I was using it. My initial intention was I was going to wait until the haptic feedback was released before I did any kind of review, but I wanted to make sure that the information you guys were watching on this throttle was as accurate as can be. So again, it is a stellar product, absolutely gorgeous. The software is seamless and very, very easy to use. The one thing you can do right now in the software is you can control things like what the hat switches do, whether they are button or hat mode. You can control whether or not the brightness of the LEDs and things like that. There is still things to do inside the software. However, the big kicker, obviously being the haptic feedback, I'm going to keep emphasizing right now, is not currently available, but it's coming. And hopefully I will share this with you guys based on the information I have received. It sounds like within the next couple of weeks at most, we should at least have a preliminary release of it. So stand tuned for that. It's obviously on its way. So anyways, that really sums up what you need to know when it comes to the MTP. It is a fantastic product, extremely well designed, extremely ergonomic, comes with a very simple and very clear-minded ease of use, right down to the customization options. Remember, the detents that come with it can be removed, they can be changed, they can be turned. There's a lot of different customization options that you can do. There, you can even, I can tell you right now that you can set the detents up to model that of an Airbus if you wanted. I actually don't particularly enjoy using detents. I think they're a pain in my ass. That's because I always forget to change them when I change aircraft. So it's 100% my fault, obviously, on that point. But I'll get into an aircraft, I'll get all loaded up, and I'll realize the detents are there. And then by then, when you're as big as I am and you're sitting in this damn thing, you go, I don't want to get up. So anyway, I choose to just remove the detents usually. But for example, in DCS world, I do have the afterburner detent set up, and that is a very, very nice feature. The finger lifts are very smooth action, don't require a lot of tension, but they require enough force where you're not going to accidentally pass through the detent itself. They are not a push through the detent, and that is important to note. They are a finger lift. You must do the finger lifts in order to get over the detent. If not, you could obviously risk doing some damage to either the throttle or the detent itself. So make sure that you use those finger lifts. But again, they're very gentle. You don't require a lot of pressure. You don't need to slam on them, lift on them. You don't need to pull and then lift. It's just a simple lift with your finger and they come open. So that is really all that I want to share when it comes to the use of this MTP throttle. Moza, as I have said on multiple occasions, is taking the flight simulation community by storm. I think this is another fantastic product. The last piece that I do want to add is you also do have the ability to daisy chain these controls. What I mean is that they have a basically it's an Ethernet cable. It looks more like a telephone cable, but you can actually connect it directly from the throttle over to, for example, the AB9 base or the AY210 yoke base, rather than using up a USB port on your computer. So you have two connection methods that are optional, either USB or you can connect with one of the other Moza devices you may have that support that particular connection. I hope you guys have found this video useful. If you did, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe. It certainly does help me, especially the likes and comment down below. It makes a big difference, unfortunately, with the YouTube algorithm. So you'll definitely be helping me out, and I appreciate it. As always, guys, stay safe and healthy. I'll see you in the next one.